Hello, I'm Howard. I've worked in UK railway engineering for nearly 20 years in everything from maintenance, renewals, and fault response to project work, design work, and management. I think this is the seventh game I'm reviewing in this series, where I look at railways and railway engineering in video games and see just how close they got it, how accurate they got the railway, what they did well, what they could have done better. Nothing a true general criticism of the games. I do have the utmost respect for games developers. I have enjoyed games for as long as I can remember, going back to the Super Nintendo. Just to make it clear that I'm not trashing this game or saying it's rubbish or anything. Me and the missus thoroughly loved this game. We both had it on PlayStation when it came out originally, and we both liked this game that much that we actually named one of our children after one of the characters in this game, just to give you some idea of what we thought of it. We do have to remember that this game is 9 years old now, and some of the graphics processing abilities and the hardware and stuff just wasn't there. So some of the technicalities aren't as good as some of the more modern games. But the general atmosphere, I think they got bang on, and we'll have a look at that throughout the video. There's a lot of focus around trains and railways in this game, not the least of which is your hideout in this game, your base, which is a train that constantly moves around the track, which is very cool. There's a lot of train based missions, a lot of railway based missions, missions surrounding the transport network and the running of the railway itself. It is quite a train centric game. The first thing I wanted to have a look at here is the switches and crossings and the general layout of the track. So we can see as the assassin train passes through here that there should be, where these two rails intersect, there needs to be what's called the crossing nose in order to allow those wheels to pass through. See how it is at the moment, the rails clip through each other and then the wheels clip through the rails, when in actual fact, if that was a real piece of rail, it would 100% be a derailment. So you need the correct components and the correct switch layout to leave those gaps for those wheels to get through. This is something a lot of games get wrong. Some get right, like Metro Exodus got it right, Fallout got it right, but it's quite common to get this wrong in games. This is the kind of layout you need here: the crossing nose and the wing rails and the check rails on either side. That's what you need for the train wheels to pass through to actually get through a crossover. A lot of games just have the rails clipping through each other, but this is like what you need. Here's a really good example of a crossing from Red Dead Redemption 2, complete with check rails. Very good. So there's a few other bits and peculiarities. Like, let's have a look. Let's go where the train's just gone. The wheel is running down the inside edge of this rail, and then it would just fly off the end and derail off onto the bridge because the switch rail is on the outside of the switch instead of the inside. There is a gap this side for the train to go straight on. At least that's there. So these points are set for the normal straight position, and when that switch is closed, they would go off down that way to the right. There is no equipment to actually move these points, so there's no stretcher bars, points operating equipment, levers, mechanical stuff. There's nothing to actually move these rails or to keep them at the right distance apart. However, I think what is clear is the developers did understand the need for levers and for stretcher bars and for the points operating equipment, because as we see in this cutscene, these blighters whack the switch, flicks it over, and sends the train off down the wrong way. And let's take a closer look at those stretcher bars. So a stretcher bar is that bar between the rails in the middle of a switch that holds the switch rails at the right distance to create the ideal gap for the train to get through the switch. You can see there's three of them here in the middle. Whereas the front one is a larger one that's bolted onto either rail, and that's probably supposed to be the lock stretcher. There's a bit more to that one. And then the next two, they've got stretcher to rail fastenings, bolts, big square headed bolts. That's realistic. That's exactly the sort of way that it's attached in the web of the rail there. So it looks pretty good. The only thing is, in this screenshot, the any levers and mechanical stuff are missing, despite the fact they've just hit the lever. There's nothing actually to push it across, but it does demonstrate that the developers knew full well that there has to be a bit more to switches than what's included in the game. Like here, they've put all the stretcher bars in and bolts and web fixing mounts, but they haven't done that in the game itself, probably because it's just too much hassle for what it's worth. But interesting to see if they've done it in this cutscene. Not that they would be the right rails, because this switch rail, this moving portion of the rail is meant to be on the inside, and they've got that the wrong way around. So that chamfered end there, that rail that's on the outside of the switch should be the inner one, really, and the stock rail should be the one going off round to the right. You can see again the crossing nose, just two rails clipping through each other. They've not really thought about the timbers in this section either. There should be long timbers here rather than just a mishmash where they all clip through each other. The wooden sleepers. See, through this section, there should be elongated long timbers through all the part where it branches off that cover the entire span of the railway, like up to 20 foot long, maybe. Really big, long timbers, instead of these that are all just clipping through each other. As for the rail fastenings, this is a believable sort of fastening. It looks like what I've seen clips before called KT clips, which are a screw down clip with a big sort of spanner that you can operate with one or two people that goes on the top with a T handle, and you screw the plate down, and that holds the rail in place. That's very believable. They're a type of fastening that exists. See, the plate sits on the rail foot there, on the foot of the rail having a foot because this is flat bottom rail. This was around at the time. This is a suitable and uh, type of rail that they would have had at this time. There are other options of bull-head rail or double-sided rail, but this is perfectly acceptable. No points operating equipment, so there should be something there to, like where I'm stood at, there should be a lever or something to pull, some kind of mechanical stuff to operate this, maybe from a signal box. Magnificent infrastructure on the macro scale, though. Some of these bridges and some of the civil engineering is really bang on. So signaling in this game looks pretty good. It falls down at a great level of scrutiny, but in general, they've got a lot of good stuff here. So the signal gantries, for instance, that these signals are on, these are pretty good, constructed similarly to how they would be. Let's have a look at these signals. So the top ones with the that are red with the white band at the end, that's a stop signal, and that's like the main block signal, if you will, that allows one train into the section at a time, and that's either in the on or off position, either danger or proceed. And you can see there it's in the this is it in the on position, which is do not pass, don't not to proceed position. You can see these signals are lit by this lamp here, but I'll get more into the operation of it in a minute. So you've got the top signal, the red one with the white band, that's the stop signal or the block signal, and then the second one down that's yellow with the V end and the chevron on it, that's a distance signal. And when the distance signal is on in the horizontal position, that means the following stop signal, the one ahead of that, is likely to be a danger. So the driver should be aware that it's time to brake and slow the train down. These are positioned at the correct amount of distance away to account for stopping distances and what have you. And when the distance signal is off, it means the signal ahead of it is in the off or proceed position. So the train knows to just carry on. And the bottom signal there that's sort of red with the horizontal white band through it at the bottom underneath the distance signal, that is a subsidiary signal that can be used to call trains past a signal that's at danger. Some areas where you've got a train maybe in a platform and you need to call another one through behind it, where ordinarily the signal wouldn't let you because it's meant to only let one train in at a time, but there are circumstances in which you need more than one train in the section, and you control that with the subsidiary signal at the bottom. So they've got the types of signals right. The only thing I take issue with is on the yellow distance signal. They've got a white sort of V-shaped chevron on it. Normally it would be a black chevron on a yellow background. So that little white V that's on the yellow arm, that I've only ever seen that black on a distance signal. I've never seen it white. So let's have a look at the operation of these signals. I believe these signals to be lower quadrant signals rather than upper quadrant. There's upper quadrant in Red Dead Redemption 2, but I think these are lower quadrant. And then what that means is the signals are horizontal when they're in the on or the stop position. So this signal now is on or stop position when it's horizontal, and when it's clear and safe to proceed, the signal angles downwards at say 45, 45 plus degrees downwards and tilts down rather than being pulled up. And I can tell that from see where that bolt is in the middle and where the lamp is. So the lamp there is currently lighting the red, and for that signal to get a green, that signal arm would have to rotate counterclockwise downwards by about 45 degrees, and then the green lens would move up into the position over the lamp, which will be a paraffin lamp there. So they've got all this. They've got a lot of the signal types right, and the lower quadrant signaling that was used very much in those days, completely believable. The only thing that doesn't make sense is some of the signaling layouts. So what exactly all these signals are signaling doesn't really make sense, but we'll look at that in a minute. So here you've got three signals over this two-track railway with the train oncoming towards us. So it's going that way, looking behind. That's one signal gantry. And then where's this next one going? These signals are facing us. So the train, this is for trains going this way. Three signals for this two-track railway, and another signal here. So it's just signaled a train in from this gantry into the block section, and then the next block section, the next signal gantry, is about 20 or 30 yards away. So you've got home distant and subsidiary, home distant and subsidiary, two in a row, 20 yards away. So the train is going to be longer than the block section in this instance. So if you have a train go past this signal, it's already passing the next signal, like moments after it's gone past it. So I think they've just thought it's an appropriate place to put one, because it's going off down this hill, or it's sort of branching off, and I think they thought that that's sort of just an appropriate place to put a signal. Here we've got another gantry with three signals going off around this single track. So obviously, what they've done here is just made a model of a gantry that looks pretty good, and it does look good. And then they've just repeated that design and put it anywhere where they thought it might require a signal. So it's been done without any sort of knowledge of signalling placement and stuff, which is it's understandable. People aren't going to know that. And then just under that bridge, there's another signal gantry here. Again, less than 100 yards away, another signal block section. There's nothing in between, no points, no differentiating lines, nothing. So they're just too frequent, and that's a common theme throughout this game, where there's just signal gantry placed everywhere where it looks appropriate, while it's not actually appropriate. Here again, there's just signals everywhere. Um, Let's talk a bit about trains then. This magnificent beast you see here is the assassin train. This gets upgraded throughout the storyline as you complete missions and get train upgrades. So it changes slightly over time as you get more things for it. It's a pretty nice design. I have the art book for this game, which explains some of the design choice, and you see that one huge wheel there with Doncaster just written on it. That's a bit more explained in the art book. But nice design of train, this color scheme of the assassins also. So um, let us consult the Book of Armaments, chapter 2, verses 9 through 21. It says here in the section about trains that steam locomotives are a great symbol of the era, metaphorically and thematically. A new, faster paced city that's fueled by coal. And for Jacob and Evie, the main characters in this game, the train becomes home, their hideout, constantly in motion, adapting and evolving throughout the game, crossing the entirety of London. So it says they took inspiration from three models of locomotives: Stirling's G Class, which is an 8 foot single 422, Stroudley's Terrier, a 060T tank engine, and the later Great Western Railway's 3252 Duke Class 440 type. They also recreated seven iron and glass stations that connect to each other through the rail lines. Let's look at one in a bit more detail, um, where that big wheel comes from. So this green train here, this is the Sterling 422, nicknamed the 8-footer, after its enormous driving wheel. It was an express train capable of reaching 47 miles an hour, and it was named after the designer Patrick Sterling, intended for use as a sort of high-speed workforce, dragging as many as 26 passenger carriages between London and York. Its efficient design at the time was considered a masterpiece, and they've incorporated that into the assassin train with its design. And you can see they've incorporated aspects of the designs from the three trains on the previous page into the final model for the assassin train. You'll note the big wheel from the 8-footer. And on the left picture, the left-hand picture, that's the train when it sort of starts off, the basic model, if you will, and then it ends up something like the train on the right. Once you've upgraded it and got all the extra parts on it, it's a good-looking train. They've put some interesting little features in this game with the trains as well. For instance, watch these buffers and the couplings when the train starts braking here and it comes to a standstill. And then when the train sets off again, you can see the same animation in basically reverse, with the buffers extending again. And I know this isn't railway engineering, but it'd be rude not to have a look around the assassin train. And this geezer trying to drag race us. I don't know how his train can be catching up and overtaking mine when my train's got a spoiler and a body kit on it. Doesn't seem right. The Great Eagle sounds like another assassin train. But anyway, we've got a sort of kit and storage room here. Assassin gear, weapons, a library by the looks of it. Skip over the carriages and the bar. Best place on the train. Plenty of booze behind there, a teapot as well. This is England, after all. Um, nice seated arrangement there, nice and cosy. There's Jacob lounging about, doing nothing as usual while I go hunting for all the pieces of Eden. A safe, some sort of assassination wall where they do the investigation and planning. Collect some money there from the safe. Fireplace on your train, you need that. That's always good to have. Let's have a look up front. You've got the driver there. Threaten him a bit. Won't be overtaking us next time. The signals, our driver's just ignoring that stop signal and going straight past. What a renegade. They can't be trying to race us again. I'm not having this. One of the better features of this game is the stations, including these platforms. See, this is a pretty normal British platform design. Unlike the American ones, I think the American ones, like you've seen in Red Dead Redemption 2, they're sort of flat at ground level, and you have to go up steps to get up there, to get up onto the train. But on these ones, the British style, these are at level with the carriage, and you just step off onto it. These big stones here are coping stones, they're called, and it's important to manage the track position in relation to those coping stones. This has to be regularly gauged because although the platform and the stones won't move over time, the track will drift and it'll drift off to the left and the right um, laterally, which you don't want because either the train gets too far away from the coping stone and passengers could fall between, or the train gets too close to the coping stone and you can get platform strike. I've seen this even with modern stations and modern trains. It's still something that has to be actively managed several times a year, gauged with a gauge that looks a lot like this. Simple X and Y axis platform gauge, and it's just important to keep an eye on the proximity to those coping stones unless it takes the side of the train out. And sometimes I've seen, you see here, I've seen them cut back. So I've seen them cut the backs out of these coping stones and move them back before when they've not been able to move track position. So they've literally gone along with a disc saw and cut pieces out the back of the coping stone and shuffled them back rather than moving the track. Whilst this is a review of sort of the engineering realism of the game and the engineering involved with the railway, Um, it's a shame for it to lose any points because this is such a good-looking game, and they've really nailed the atmosphere of Victorian London and the Victorian railway stations. They've got the hustle and bustle. There's a guy there sweeping up, and there's little kiosks and stands everywhere. A guy wearing those placard boards with advertisements on. They've really got, and look at this lighting as well. They've really got the atmosphere of the game down, and it doesn't count towards engineering technicality, and it is nevertheless really nice to look at, even if the stretcher bars are missing. So overall, then, as we look out over these Victorian streets, um, to give the game a final score, the the S&C, the switches and crossings don't work. There's no points operating equipment, so there's nothing to move the trains around. The train would derail immediately if it went over any of them in reality because the switch rails are wrong, the crossings are wrong. Um, the signals, whilst they've got the right components, aren't laid out in any way that would signal trains effectively into different block sections. Um, the platforms and stations are okay, and I tell you what, the one thing they have got right, the general civil engineering of the stations and the bridges in this game as well, the railway bridges, some of them obviously real, taken from the real world, some of the big bridges, fantastic. Grosvenor Bridge is in there. So they've got the sort of large scale engineering the world correct, but the minutiae of how it works and any levers and mechanical parts to operate it just aren't there, which is to be expected. It's an older game. You probably wouldn't want to put all that extra stuff in and just slow everything up. And, how important is it to the story? It's not really. And these reviews are really just a bit of fun for me. But yeah, it's interesting to look at anyway. But the game looks great, and I thoroughly enjoyed playing it. Some of the reason this video has come out later than I'd have liked is because I played this game and got up to level 9 and just about completed it as well. So um, great game, but the railway, let's give it a 5.5 out of 10 for the actual effectiveness. Some of the parts are there; they've included a lot of the right stuff, but none of it just a lot of it just doesn't make sense.
We seem to have a tight
Um,
schedule
Thanks
still.
for tuning in.